have a position like this. What you end up seeing in states with programs is the patient goes in, and a lot of places, and particularly in Ohio, as it's starting their program, we're going to have a predominantly naive patient population. And so there's going to be little exposure to edibles that will be available, oils that will be available. And so determining your dosage and the form that you should use to treat your qualifying condition is not something that you necessarily are going to have guidance from your physician about. And in most cases in other states, you don't have guidance. And this clinical director is intended to bridge that gap in information.
Okay, more to come on that. I think it's going to be a tricky position, and there'll be more development in that space as we go further down the road. I'm sorry, yes, go ahead.
A number of you said that you thought that the clinical director should be a practicing physician. Will that physician be able to hold a license to recommend?
No.
Can I point out one last thing? This provision, or a provision like it, was specifically taken out of the statute as it came from the Senate provisions and as it was finally approved by the Senate and the House. So to me, to say that some states don't, there's only 2 that do. And so I think it was somewhat reflective of the legislative history that this provision was considered and then decided to be removed.
My response to that would be that this is supposed to be a compromise between the interest to have more healthcare guidance at a dispensary, and there has been interest in the requirement that may have been in an earlier bill, drafts of the bill, required them to be a full-time employee located at the dispensary.
I would like to make a comment. I think this is going to be a very, very difficult position for these dispensaries to fill, and I suspect that one of the biggest barriers they're going to have is actually getting one of these professionals into this role. And I would at least entertain the idea of not making it a requirement, because I think trying to get 40 of these professionals into 40 dispensaries, I just don't think you're going to find them. They're going to be willing to take that risk for what's probably not high enough compensation.
All right, 6307, which is how we're going to actually receive medical marijuana in these dispensaries. Rules around that. These are in nature as we go through here now. 308, security measures. Anything catch your eye there around how we're going to assure security of the dispensaries?
Again, these are excellent provisions. You guys did a wonderful job here. It's just going to be very high cost to me, and we would encourage these type of provisions, but there needs to be an acknowledgement that without sufficient patient access, it will be hard to be viable and be able to meet them long term.
Comments? Questions? Moving on to 309, some of the dispensing rules now around the mechanics of the product in the patient's hands. Lots of detail here, yes.
Just following up on 309A about the individual who's under 18 years of age. It has a designated caregiver that has to be that person. How does that differ from a legal guardian?
For a minor, it's right now it's anticipated that the caregiver would be a legal guardian for that person, parent or legal guardian.
Okay, yeah, I wanted to make sure that there wasn't someone who's a designated caregiver, but yet was making decisions for the young person that didn't have a legality to do so.
I'm working through some of that on patient caregiver rules right now.
Questions? All right. Moving through to 3-10, labeling now. Nothing there. 3-11, reporting into the ORS program.
As just had a quick question about ORS reporting under Section A. There are a number of things that are required to be submitted to ORS, and I was just curious, will the product identifier or the drug name contain information about percent constituents and ratios, or is that a separate thing that's being considered as being added to the ORS report?
So the product identifier right now is going to, you can consider that like the state NDC. NDCs obviously won't be issued because that's the National Drug Code. It's issued by the FDA traditionally. We are anticipating that each manufacturer's product, dose, and quantity of that product will receive a separate product identifier in a way that's very similar to NDC's product.
Okay. 6312, duty reports. I had a specific question for John on the spot, but you will notice in the rule that is a dual notification to the Board of Pharmacy and the local law enforcement. I'm curious if you have any thoughts on that.
No, I think that's reasonable. And not throwing my local folks under the bus, but it should be reported to both parties.
Okay. Okay. It's pretty okay. Other comments, questions on that? 6313, how we're going to handle dispensing errors. No. And then 14, how we're going to actually handle the data on those errors.
Question on that: do they mirror the regulatory rules right now for pharmacy errors?
Somewhat. Those are somewhat.
Are they more restrictive than pharmacy errors?
The dispensing errors they're probably less restrictive.
Reporting to us is more restrictive.
It is.
The board reporting is more restrictive. I can tell you organization reporting, it's probably less restrictive. So the rule meets that middle ground. I think you'll find many organizations have a more strict interpretation of what to do with those dispensing errors. Whether that'll pop up in the marijuana community, I'm not sure. But from direct answer to your question, from today's standpoint, many organizations are even more restrictive on how we report and handle those errors.
So if there was an opioid error, it would be very similar. Well, they would not report to you, or would they?
It's not required to be. Sometimes it is error and had a point.
So one of the things here too, remember that they're not opening the packaging at the dispensary before it's dispensed to the patient. So the error in dispensing for a dispensary is different in that regard. So the way we have to track it is going to be a little bit different. They're not going to miscount, the number of units as they're dispensing it to a patient, because the units are going to be in a sealed container. So the rules drafted differently for that reason. So that's why I struggled with answering your earlier question.
Okay. 6315, destruction and disposal. As James alluded to earlier, what we waste in this whole process, what do we do with it? I found this to be unique. I think we'll be challenged in this space on how to actually get rid of this stuff once we have to, whether it expires or it's broken or whatever the case may be. So I think we'll probably have some comments on that as well. I think it's universally, I think we can say universally this is an issue that many programs struggle with, on how to get rid of products. There's no reverse distribution in this case. It has to be end stage disposed of.
A question on
yes.
In law enforcement, we normally get a court order by the senior police court judge to destroy it. I don't know whether that would be applicable in this case, or some form of that. So it's not correct.
The distinction here, though, is that this is considered under Ohio law now to be a Schedule II controlled substance, and it's not going to be evidence of a crime in this particular case. Yeah, right, so there would not be contraband included in that either, which is why the judge is included in the process.
I'm not suggesting that, it's just another check and balance in the system.
Okay.
Questions there? 6316, educational materials. Yes, Marcy.
I think that education is always a good thing. I am just really struggling with the B under that as to how in the world do you come up with that? My understanding is there's about 800 strains of marijuana that have differing THC and cannabinoids in it, levels of it that range from THC from 3, 4, 5, 7% up to 35% or more. And the different forms and various, I mean, how do we wrap our arms around that kind of information and give our patients good solid information and how it interacts? Because we don't have a robust body of research that tells us that.
The dispensary is going to be responsible for at least having some information on the strains and varieties that it carries. So not necessarily all strains and all varieties. So they need to have some knowledge so that they can have some informed communication with their patients.
This is where I think, to James' point specifically, should this be in or out? This is an area where a clinical director, who I suspect will be developing a lot of this educational material, to me is key. Because of the soft data that's around us. There'll be a lot of inference we have to build into this. And two, I think as we're getting into the 90-day supply, what we're uncovering from an evidence perspective, which I will say every day gets more robust. So I want to also be careful that when when states initially adopted some of this work, the evidence was in one state. We're now today, and the evidence is rapidly changing in this space. We want Ohio to adopt best practice based on today's evidence, not what historical evidence may have told us in the past. And as we look at that deeper, the risk for untoward drug interactions and adverse effects is beginning to emerge as an issue that was not anticipated earlier in this journey. And that's where I think a lot of this work will be done, education and patient awareness about this could in fact significantly interact with other products that we are already taking through the establishment of the channels. And I think that's where that clinical director needs to play a strong role. So again, another area where emerging science is maybe pointing us in a different direction that prior science may not have. Yes, definitely.
Just to piggyback on what you just said, noting that the information is changing, sometimes on a daily and monthly basis. B1 and 2 both mentioned updated information have to be provided in those specific arenas, and I was just wondering if there's a stipulation on what updated means, or if that's up to the clinical director to set in the policies and procedures.
At this point, that would be up to the clinical director's discretion. Policies have to be reviewed at least once a year. I can certainly go back and take a look and see if updated needs to be more specific.
It doesn't specifically call out that the material has to be printed. Is it my understanding this could be, for example, on the website of the dispensary, you can get updated there, and they can just point people to the website. Is that an option?
Potentially, they could have some of this information available on their website. I know that dispensaries in other states have traditionally had printed material that patients can pick up and read and review while they're at the dispensary. In many other states that have new programs, when the patient walks in the door, they don't necessarily know exactly what they need to take in order to treat their condition. And so they're looking for something in the dispensary oftentimes to help inform their decision.
I guess what I'm asking is, if the dispensary said, well, look at our website, there's our educational material, and we had no printed material, would they be in compliance with the rule as written?
I'm going to go back and review the rule because I do think that there needs to be written materials some written materials available at the dispensary itself for the reasons that I previously stated. So I'll go back and ensure that there will be a requirement that there be some written materials in your view.
Actually, this could be made to work. I mean, you could access the computer at the dispensary with the assistance of who's over there. Simply print it out and take it home. You could get the most updated material that way. But I to put this burden of updating the information on the director, medical director, nurse practitioner today is quite a burden. I can't imagine many individuals being up to that. It's a full-time job. So having the web access would be a great idea.
I would agree with you. I mean, you could even envision, the 40 dispensaries having some sort of consortium where they have a shared website where they, actually I think that would be a better product because you can update it more frequently rather than having just printed materials, which is cost and, all that sort of stuff.
I can understand, as long as it's available inside the dispensary. I can appreciate that.
We want to try to avoid voting versions of the same piece of information. Right? I think many of us work in the space where we have migrated away from printed educational materials for this very reason. It's only as current as that time you just press enter and print. Right? And then after that, it could be